If you want to stay in the EU, just listen to what I have to say in this video. But please remember, what I say has nothing to do with me. It's about the EU, it's about our future. Forget the mask, forget the voice changing software, they know who I am anyway. But please just relax and listen to what I have to say about the EU over the next few minutes. Just look at this article. After the leaks showed what it stands for, could this be the end for TTIP? Today's shock leak of the text of the Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership, TTIP, marks the beginning of the end for the hated EU-US trade deal and a key moment in the Brexit debate. The unelected negotiators have kept the talks going until now by means of a fanatical level of secrecy, with threats of criminal prosecution for anyone divulging the treaty's contents. TTIP. I bet a lot of people who want to stay in the EU haven't really bothered looking into TTIP, because if you kind of like the EU, by rights, you probably like TTIP. People just believe what they're told by the mainstream media. And up until now, the mainstream media have presented TTIP in a positive light, meaning it must be good for the countries in the EU. Of course it will be good for those countries, otherwise they wouldn't bother, right? Wrong. Very, very wrong. TTIP has, since the very beginning the negotiations started, as the article states, been negotiated in secrecy. Why? Why do you think this massive trade deal has been negotiated in secret, with even national governments not even allowed to know what's being elected? So much for being at the negotiating table, as the Remain campaign will say, hey. But seriously, why? I'm not patronising you. Why do you think it has been shrouded in so much secrecy that people face criminal charges for divulging the treaty's texts? The Remain campaign like to say that we're better in the EU bloc of nations, we're safer, we're stronger and all that, and that it's better that we're at the EU negotiating table on these type of deals. But with TTIP being negotiated in complete secrecy, not even our government, as I just said, not even our own government knows what's being negotiated. How is that considered us being involved and having a voice and having a seat at the table? It doesn't. We haven't. Surely people who want to stay in the EU can see that anything done behind closed doors in the dead of night, so no one can see what they're doing by, and here's the word again, unelected negotiators. Surely that can't be for the good of the people. If it was, why the secrecy? If it was to benefit the people of the EU, then why negotiate it in secret and threaten to prosecute people who talk about what they've negotiated? This should raise a massive red flag for anyone with a brain to think. Even the Remain campaigners must be able to see what this is all about. I have to admit that hearing something like this about a global trade deal in the mainstream media is startling and very welcome. I think even the mainstream media are beginning to realise that the people have actually had enough of their lies and deception that they continually spew, and have come to realise that if they don't start telling the truth, then the mainstream media is finished. But anyway, let's get back to the TTIP article, and it gets worse. Now, for the first time, the people of Europe can see for themselves what the European Commission has been doing under cover of darkness, and it's not pretty. Remember, the EU Commission is a bunch of unelected bureaucrats. So if TTIP passes and turned out to be the nightmare treaty that many believe it to be, you couldn't take your revenge on them by removing the commissioners, because the commissioners, every single one of them, are unelected. This is my main beef with the EU. It is run, despite all the rhetoric to the contrary, by unelected dictators. That is pure fact. The Remain campaign, please, seriously answer me this question. How do you feel about being in the EU and being governed by unelected bureaucrats that you can never remove or ever hold to account for their actions? I've never heard a decent answer to this question. All you get from the Remain campaign is, oh, it's better to work to reform the EU from within. Well, isn't that what Cameron was supposed to be doing over the last year or so? The EU won't change. They have unelected bureaucrats negotiating in secret a trade deal that will affect the lives of over 500 million people, and soon to be over 600 million people. And no one can see the text. And if anyone who's been negotiating the text tells anybody what's in it, then they could go to prison. What part of any of that spells democracy in the EU? The leaked TTIP document published by Greenpeace this morning ran to 248 pages and cover 13 of the 17 chapters. Where the final agreement has begun to take shape, the text includes highly controversial subjects such as EU food safety standards, already known to be at risk from TTIP, as well as details of specific threats such as the US plan to end Europe's ban on genetically modified foods. Now we're getting into why the secrecy. America, as we all know, is the most obese country and the most sick country in the Western world. And people are waking up to the fact that it's partly because of GMO food. And TTIP would flood Europe with GMOs. And do you know what? There would be nothing we could do about it, because TTIP, despite the huge, massive, overwhelming evidence that GMOs cause obesity and disease, is being negotiated by unelected bureaucrats behind closed doors in the dark of night, threatening people with prison for disclosure, because we're told they know what's best for us. The documents show that US corporations will be granted unprecedented powers over any new public health or safety regulations to be introduced in future. If any European government does dare to bring in laws to raise social and environmental standards, TTIP will grant US investors the right to sue for loss of profits in their own corporate court system that is unavailable to domestic firms, governments, or anybody else. And if secret negotiations, not allowing national governments to look at the documents, threatening people who disclose the text with prison, allowing GMO poison into Europe wasn't bad enough, these documents prove yet again what the so-called conspiracy theorists have been saying for years, and that's that corporations will be able to sue nation-states if the corporation feels they're losing profits in any certain country. Say, for example, the UK government grew a pair of bollocks and banned all GMOs. Then Monsanto, the most evil company on the planet, could sue our government for the loss of their future profits. Profits that they haven't even made. Imagine how much the tobacco companies could have sued for all the non-smoking campaigns, etc. Anyone with a brain to think surely has to reject every single aspect of TTIP. This is why it was negotiated in secret. As this article suggests, this has to be the end of the road for TTIP. There surely can now only be two groups of people who support TTIP. One, people that haven't had an original thought for themselves since they were 5 years old. You know the people I refer to, the Facebook-loving, selfie-loving zombies. And two, politicians that have quite simply been bought and paid for by corporations that will make billions from TTIP. Rest assured that if a politician supports TTIP, regardless of what they say, they've been bought and paid for. The leaked text also reveal how the European Commission is prepared to open up the European economy to unfair competition from giant US corporations, despite acknowledging the disastrous consequences that will bring to the European producers, who have to meet far higher standards than pertain in the USA. See, the unelected Commission have obviously been bought and paid for by large US and global corporations. How else would they want to open up the European economy to unfair competition from giant US and global corporations? The Commission, who are all unelected, are not working for the good of the people. They're working for US and global corporations. According to official statistics, at least 1 million jobs will be lost as a direct result of TTIP, and twice that many if the full deal is allowed to go through. Yet we can now see that EU negotiators are preparing to trade away whole sectors of our economies in TTIP, with no care for human consequences. Why would they knowingly negotiate up to 2 million job losses in Europe? Why would they do that? Who would do that in their right mind? Why would they negotiate away whole sectors of the European Union economy with not a care for the human consequences? Who the hell do these people stroke tyrants think they are? This is another reason it was negotiated in secret. The European Commission slapped a 30-year ban on public access to the TTIP negotiating text at the beginning of the talks in 2013, in the full knowledge that they would not be able to survive the outcry if people were given sight of the deal. Can you believe that? Honestly, can you believe the audacity of the unelected commissioners? They even put a 30-year ban on public access to the TTIP negotiation texts because the people negotiating it are scared shitless. The people would find out what they've been doing, find out that they've been bought and paid for, and that they're willing to sacrifice at least 2 million jobs so that they can get their backhanders from giant US and global corporations and sell us down the river in the process. I'll say it if no one else will. This is treason to everybody in the European Union. The Commission, the unelected Commission, need to hang for what they've tried to do. Oh, but we can't do a bloody thing about the Commission, can we? Because they're unelected. They are unelected dictators. By their deeds you shall know them. You see why all this was done in the dark now, don't you? They're uncloaking now, aren't they? The EU Commission and the EU bureaucracy is a dictator that is working for corporations. They don't want the EU to break up because they want to control us. They just don't want you to ever find out what they are actually working towards. Come on, people. This is outrageous. This is one move too far. No wonder the French and Germans and Dutch are all now questioning TTIP. For those of us in the thick of the EU referendum debate, the contempt shown by the TTIP negotiators to the people of Europe is the most potent reminder of the democratic deficit at the heart of the EU institutions. Today's leak of the TTIP text leaves the leaders of the European Union with a choice. They either abandon the TTIP negotiations immediately, or they risk seeing the entire European project come crashing down about their ears. They have until the 23rd of June to decide. Ask anyone from the Remain campaign about the questions TTIP raises and see if they realise just what the unelected EU commissioners, unelected, I'll say it again, EU dictators, are doing in our name. The release of these documents is an open goal for the Brexit campaign. If we stay in the EU and TTIP goes through, then we only have ourselves to blame. How much of this BS are we going to take? How dare they negotiate a trade deal in secret, putting a 30-year ban on the public seeing the text? How dare they threaten people with prison if they disclose any of the text? How dare they knowingly trade away possibly 2 million jobs in Europe? TTIP is a treaty of, for and by the corporations who have paid off every single negotiator. We as a people, the Brexit campaign, the Remain campaign, we need to come together on Brexit and reject it in its entirety, and then go after, in any way possible, the people who try to sell our futures and the future generations' future down the river to the corporations. The real reason for TTIP is to say to countries in the EU that nation states, national governments and your own judicial system just do not matter anymore. They simply do not count. The unelected commissioners know best and want to move to corporate governance with corporate tribunals. There are large corporations that want to sell their stuff to us, and if TTIP passes, then it doesn't matter if what they sell is toxic, destructive, it doesn't matter if their food is full of pesticides, which has now been proven to be the case. They will sell it to you regardless, and if they can't, they will sue your country for billions of lost future profits, and the unelected EU Commission want this to go through. This trade treaty clearly puts corporations massively above people, the state, and even the environment. But remember, this is what the unelected EU commissioners want. The unelected EU Commission are not working for the good of the people. We are insane if we do not get our country back, get our borders back, and get out the EU on the 23rd of June.